I'll
show you one more bit of this. There are about 8 stops along the way, and the story develops, but the whole idea of it is that you also learn about Boston. It's not just about the story, so it's somewhat episodic, but I think we'll just jump in the middle.
Custody on a charge of the murder of Dr. Parkman.
Have they found Dr. Parkman?
It's not proper for me to answer that question, sir.
Wait, tell me something. Where did they find him? How did it affect me?
You should be outside the Liberty Hotel, standing before a fragment of the original jail entrance. It's near the sidewalk. See it? At first, the police suspected the Irish, Boston's favorite scapegoats. But Webster was arrested for the murder of Dr. Parkman on the 30th of November, 1849, after they found a torso and other pieces of a man strewn in and under Webster's laboratory, just a couple blocks from here. This jail would open 2 years later and never housed Webster. So what does this have to do with our story? You see surprising stretches of glass and a skylit cupola on top. This was the most progressive penitentiary of its time, and it reflects a dream Parkman always had, just out of his reach. Go ahead, step through this entryway to Parkman's lost paradise. Play the next track when you're at the bottom of the escalators, just inside. Once you're inside the hotel, go ahead up the escalators and stop when you get into the upstairs lobby.
The truth is that everything that George Parkman wanted, he had been frustrated. He was interested in the insane. He wanted very much to be in charge of an asylum in Boston. And now this did not take place.
This wide open space, this uplifting architecture above you, doubles well as a testimony to Parkman's dashed dreams. Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about. You should be at the top of the escalator, facing the reception desk. Do you see a brick wall to your right? You might notice that there's a diagonal of lighter colored bricks running up that wall. Now hold up this video. Do you see the lighter bricks? And look at this old photograph coming in, showing the slanted staircase that used to be there, and the floor-to-ceiling light flooding into this glowing, clean chamber. Such a mix of progressive ideals with extreme orderliness was George Parkman's vision for the mentally ill, and a legacy of his Brahmin class.
Is to be established on one of the most delightful and retired spots thereof.
But George never got his asylum. He proceeded through life still with a sense of pity for the downtrodden, but now with a bitter need for order in all his dealings, even with an old Harvard friend who had bent his graces too far. You can just imagine him huffing down the street to that meeting with Webster.
I suspect that Parkman looked on the outside the way he felt on the inside. A thin, lean, elongated face with a jutting chin. We see him in a stovepipe hat. We imagine that he's got a strange gait.
And when Parkman showed up right on time to his appointment with Webster, he was determined to collect on his debt, one way or another. Webster had promised a collection of rare minerals as collateral, but Parkman didn't want the rocks. He wanted his $3,000, $200,000 today, or the moral equivalent. These moral values were clearly laid out on a game board that Brahmin Boston knew well, and it's waiting for you at the concierge desk. Yeah, actually walk over to the concierge and ask for the Parkman game.
There's more. All you need is an iPhone. So the reason this project came about is that I made a film called Murder at Harvard, which was referred to at the beginning. And an MIT graduate student named Michael Epstein came to me and asked if I'd be interested in trying to adapt the film somehow into a game. And this was in the early days, quite a while ago actually. And it took quite a few years to work it out. But Michael and his team eventually designed this, and it morphed into an iPhone app along the way because that's what the technology demanded. And the idea behind it is to create what they call mobile media, stuff for small handheld devices, content for handheld devices that actually has some value in them. Maybe that's the wrong word, but is deeper than restaurant reviews and deeper than games and deeper than simply how to get from point A to point B. I mean, these machines are amazing with their geolocation devices and all the rest of it, and they can do amazing things, but it's not easy to figure out how to create content that actually adds to the sort of general level of things. And this was an attempt funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities to do that, to still make it fun, to keep it short, because nobody wants to look at a tiny screen for very long, but to also have it change your view of things a little bit. And our hope with this is that people will never, anyone who's done this or even part of it, will never look at Beacon Hill quite the same way again. They'll know the secrets that are behind these walls and behind the doors and feel a little differently about it. It doesn't, of course, have to be Boston. I mean, every city has stories like this. Michael's company, Michael Epstein's company, Untravel, also did a tour of Venice, which was their very first effort. And it's not as easy to get the sense of it, but I'm going to play a little bit. Tour that
prepare yourself for a journey guided by this map fragment, littered with mysterious characters. Exit the gardens through the gate and head towards the first balcony to your right. That's Dario Pinton, our first guide. Dario is a kind of expert in the handshake between the formal, selected art of the galleries and the casual art of the unexpected.
Learn to connect what you see with your memory and a sort of collage.
The Furio, stop musician. As you walk with him, try to focus on what's disappeared, what's missing. It's decision time.
Here, in the middle of Calle Correr, on the left we have this iron gate. Let's stop and observe a bit.
Guarda, io sono bene contento e felice. Io sto bene come sto. Ho lavorato 40 anni, ho avuto la mia pensione e ho diritto di riposare.
Now we have the young master of glass, Fabio Fornazier.
My grandfather built the bricks for the railways. So from there,
Look at the screen for a quick dawn journey to Murano.
Giocando alla finità e agli altri giochi.
Fisherman, historian, tenor.
And this is where I live now.
Fisherman, historian, tenor.
And this is where I live now.
sono pozzi pluviali, cioè la pioggia viene raccolta dai pozzi.
When going around Venice, you always have a human
Cioè la
contact.
pioggia viene raccolta dai pozzi.
When going around Venice, you always have a human contact.
This is Capita Shipyard.
And this is the part of the castle.
This is Capita Shipyard.
This is the part of the castle.
Street Wire presents a legend. Yes. Street Wire presents a legend. Yes.
So, our hope is to develop other tours like that, somewhere between those two. The Venice one was an early effort and funded through MIT. The Murder at Harvard one was a more story-driven, thematic kind of thing. But we feel that every city has its stories, and how much fun it would be to be able to go there and not have to rely on the usual guidebook, but have something that's a little more behind the scenes, behind the closed doors, and that can also be done sitting in your chair at home on the internet. So that's what we're aiming to do with those. It's all part of this this necessity of getting away from the established formats of broadcast television and theatrical release, which unfortunately, much as I've loved doing it over these years, has become harder to get funded and harder to get distributed. So the future beckons. That's what we're all looking at. Thank you.
This is sort of a microcosm of theater. You have to wait for the technology to go away before the live person can talk. Which is a little bit, Eric, that was fascinating. Just fascinating. But what really scares me is the fact that you said this. You could take the tour of the city without a guidebook, or you could sit at home. Sit at home. This is what makes theater different than film, by the way. You can't sit at home. You have to go. It's okay, you can respond. Theater is a part of a reciprocal response experience. I say something, you laugh. I'm happy. I say something that's funny, you don't laugh, I leave. So please, this is, see, everybody's back here.
Hello.
I kind of like coming out here, all right? Before when Barry said that some people were going to give you some information and some people were going to be the entertainment, I turned to Eric and I said, you're the information, I'm the entertainment. Theater started where? In a cave. Caveman came back after a long day at work and talked to his other caveman buddies and said, I got a story. And they shared that story. And we continue to share that story through the ancient Greeks, or as some of my fellow countrymen like to call us now, the Hellenes. I'm part of the only kind of, YouTube, not YouTube, but the only kind of a Facebook social network I'm on is LinkedIn. And there's this one group called Greek American Professionals. And the longest discussion between two Greeks was, what's the name of the country? Is it Greece or is it Hellas? I've diverged for a moment. But the point that I'm making is that human contact, at one point, was very interesting. When you were showing I have to kind of use your thing as an example, which I thought was fascinating. But it said that in that tour of Venice, that human contact was the most important thing. And I sat here and I went, really? Because I don't really see a whole lot of human contact. And this is, I think, part of the digital age that is starting to cause problems for the theatrical event. Because more and more people no longer go to theater. And this gets me nervous because I still have several years before I retire, so I need to pay my bills. So please come to the theater. But theater cannot exist in a vacuum. Not that filmmaking can, but you could sit at home. I do it all the time, Netflix. Whoa, okay. I now watch this movie, or I watch a documentary, or I watch, a television show from 1957. I can't do that. I can do that by myself. You can't do that with theater. Theater is a reciprocal response experience. So how does this become globalized? You mentioned Thomas Friedman a little while ago, and I heard him speak at the Theater Communications Group conference in Philadelphia about 10 years ago. And he said the biggest problem is connectivity in the digital age. We're so connected to one another, but we're not. Yeah. We're not. People say, Spiro, you should be on Facebook. I said, please, here's my Facebook. I talk to you. And I really believe that. So as the globe gets smaller, and it does, I think we start insulating ourselves from that kind of contact that theater, frankly, gives us. Because as it went from, as I was saying, the ancient Greeks and Thespis steps out and suddenly we have an actor and, we go into Shakespeare's time and I'm going to, world history in 30 seconds. And then we go to the modern theater and, what is the bottom line is storytelling. But storytelling in an atmosphere like this, where we can react to what happens on stage. When you sit at home and watch a comic film, do you laugh?
Yes.
You do? All the time?
No, sometimes.
Okay. But when you go to a theater, see the same movie with 240 people or whatever, you find that you laugh a little bit more, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think that that's part of what I think we're losing in the globalization of everything. Because we're so worried about how can we bring all of this to us, where I kind of want to think is how can we bring us to all of that, if that makes any sense at all. I'm not sure sometimes if I'm making sense. But theater has to live, as I said, not in a vacuum, and it has to live in a world where the digital age is taking us by storm. I received a call, I guess it was 2 years ago, from a person who was planning on doing basically what is happening now with the opera and also with the National Theatre in London, where they're televising those pieces. I saw a play recently at the Coolidge Corner Cinema from the National Theatre in London. Wow, it's great. Then I remembered going to the National Theatre in London, and the experience was so different for me. But this person called and said, we're thinking about putting plays on the internet. And I went, really? Do you know how dull that will be? Have you ever seen a play on television? PBS, for years, great performances. Remember, you said, God, this is dull. Because there is not that immediacy of the theatrical experience. So as we're looking at this ever-shrinking globe, I'm hoping, desperately, that the actual human contact not human contact, you know. You know what I love? Another thing I loved about it. Every person in that film was like this. Nobody was looking at one another. You know? And I know it's easy to criticize technology. It's real simple for me to do it because we're humans. And we crave human contact with one another. That's what we live for.